I often hear a lot of people advocating for Africa to have a permanent voice within the UN Security Council. You mentioned it just now, but I would like to know from you what exactly needs to be done for Africa to be recognized in that fashion, for it to be a permanent voice there within the UN Security Council.
No, South Africa and the whole of African continent must stop electing puppets. They need to elect people who are going to challenge the status quo, and not from a lip service. They must be able to put up a case in such a way that their voice is being heard. So we have a lot of clowns that get elected here in the continent. They go there and then they go shopping instead of going to fight for the recognition of the African continent. So we still have got a long way to go. We still have some of the countries in Africa that are still paying colonial taxes to France and things like that. And we expect such people to go to the UN Security Council and agree that Africa must be represented. So we need to politically conscientize and take over the African continent and position Africa in the UN Security Council at the same level as India, China, Russia, America, and all of that. Because the reality is that we are equal. And actually we have got more resources than them, but we are treated like we are the stepchildren of the world. Because our leadership hasn't demonstrated that power to force the Security Council and the UN to agree that Africa should be a permanent member of the Security Council. The Security Council has become one of the strategic organs of the UN, and it's important that we have a voice, and that voice ought to be permanent, and it must exercise the same powers that the rest of permanent members are exercising.
Well, some African leaders have accused the West of influencing outcomes of elections, or they've even accused the West of coming into Africa in the guise of combating terrorism. What would you say to such allegations?
It's true. They've always manipulated elections, especially in the countries where the institutions are not that in order. In the rural Zimbabwe, where in the rural areas there are no observers. And if you try to be an observer of a different political party, the army points a finger at you that if you still want to stay here, this kind of things is not going to be tolerated here. We are a democracy that is maturing. Our people are becoming more clever and clever. And not after a very long time will we realize true freedom even outside the Western influence. The Western influence is through culture, is through media. Now there is alternative platforms to counter that narrative. That's why even when the mainstream media wants to say whatever it wants to say, the alternative media gives us the correct information that we can critique, analyze, and accept which one becomes a better version. Look at RT today. They banned it in South Africa, but nothing has stopped us from accessing the Russian news. They thought we were relying on them alone, and that's how they wanted to influence us, the West, so that they only feed us through their mainstream newspapers what is actually happening between Russia and Ukraine. The alternative media has given us the realities of what's transpiring in those countries. And South Africa is in a much, much more better position now to say we're with Russia, we're with Palestine, we're with Cuba, and things like that. Yeah.
The Sahel region is currently investigating Ukraine with regards to it coming into the Sahel regions, particularly in Sudan and Somalia, with its weapons. They have a brewing and ongoing conflict on their doorstep. Why do you think they are diverting their resources in places like Sudan?
Well, like I said to you, they don't have any muscle power to can even extend themselves to any other country. They are always used as a front. You should know wherever you find Ukraine, the Western forces are interested. wherever it is. So it can't be that confronted with Russia, you can still open another front when you know you are militarily challenged. So it's not their own battles. The instability there, it benefits the West. And that's why they are now sending their people to want to continue more confusion, as it were, in that part of our continent, so that there's no stability and they continue to benefit from that instability.